In the city of Boston, there is no sculptor more prolific than Nancy Schön. Mrs. Schön sculpted pieces like the Tortoise and the Hare in Copley Square, Winnie the Pooh and his friends at the Newton Public Library, Myrtle the Turtle on Beacon Hill, and Boston's most iconic sculpture, Make Way for Ducklings, in the public gardens. For decades, Miss Schön has made the world a brighter place with her artwork and community service. In anticipation of her 97th birthday later this month, I reached out to speak with her about her work, her inspirations, and her childhood. So please sit back and enjoy my conversation with the woman who sculpted Boston, Nancy Schön. Nancy Schön, I am a huge fan of your work, and in many ways, you are like Boston's preeminent sculptor. You have such a great presence in and around Boston with your lovely sculptures, but you are not from Boston City proper. Like me, you are from Newton, right?
Correct. Yes.
Were you also born in the Newton Wellesley Hospital?
No, it turns out I was born in the Faulkner Hospital,
Oh, really?
but I've lived in Newton all my life.
I have heard it said that Newton, and I was born in 2000, so this is way after a lot of the industry had left, but I'd heard it said that Newton is like the city of petals. It's sort of like five different petals, it's been called.
Oh no, 13 different petals, which means 13 different towns. There's a sculpture that shows the petals on the Newton Library, and there are 13 different villages: West Newton, Newton, Woburn, Newtonville.
So I
Anyway,
suppose I have to ask which petal you are from. Which petal gets to claim you?
well, I was born in Newton Center, and I'm now in West Newton,
Yeah.
but I've traveled much the world.
And that's really interesting that you have traveled much the world, and there's this terrific documentary that was made last year about your duck sculptures going to Moscow, which you worked on, which was really terrific. And of course, you have pieces that have been exhibited in places like Israel and all across the world, but you still live in the town that you were born in. I mean, how have you seen Newton change throughout your life?
Oh my. Well, I am in September, I will be 97. And in my lifetime, the milkman came with a horse and wagon.
Oh, really?
In my house, we had a ice box, not a refrigerator.
Right.
And the bread man came, and the meat man came, and the Wonder Bread man came.
Yeah.
And if you would be in Newton Center, you would see at the corner of Center Street and Beacon Street, there's a horse trough. It used to be a horse trough.
Mhm.
So I remember when the men would come and water their horses, the brag man, anybody who had a horse would go to that place. And I think it's full of flowers now, but it's a remnant of when I was a child. And when I went to the Rice School, which was up until second grade, and then you cross the street to the Mason School, and the Mason School was torn down, and it is the parking lot in the middle of Newton Center.
Yeah.
And they built something called Weeks Noon Junior High, which seventh to ninth, whereas the Mason School originally was from second to eighth, and then it changed, and they had a junior. That all happened in my lifetime. And Newton High School had three buildings, and you went from one building to the next,
Mm.
and there were tunnels. And there have been two buildings since then. So, is that what you want me to talk about? I'm happy to.
I'll talk to you about Newton all day. As a matter of fact, it's interesting to me that you talk about your early childhood in Newton being, talking about horses and wagons and so on and so forth, because at the time, Newton was, a suburb, of course, where people would go and work in Boston or work in Newton proper. But I know a lot of people now use Newton as a bedroom community for Worcester as well. When you were a little girl, did you go into Boston or Worcester very often?
Well, I didn't, I really didn't go into Boston as a little girl because there was a cinema in Newton Corner where we could go to. It
Yeah.
was a bowling alley that we could go to. Later on, I commuted to Boston because there was a commuter train, which there still is, but it's a little different now. It's now it's a trolley car now rather than a train, the Green Line.
Of course, the lovely, always working Green Line.
So, but I really didn't go into Boston until I was a little older. And basically, we went as far as maybe Brookline.
Right.
Um, there was a bowling alley in Brookline, but that goes into my teenagers age because there was a bus from my house right down to Newton Corner, and our big thing that we did as children alone was to go to the Newton Paramount Theater in Newton Corner. So
Yeah,
we get on the bus for a nickel, and then we could go to the movies for 10 cents. And
we should bring that back. That's not a bad idea.
and of course, we were prepared with our penny candy that we had gotten before to go to the.
Oh yeah. Do you have is there a specific kind of candy that Nancy Shern is the most drawn to?
I love Milky Ways.
Oh, that's where it's at too. Those are great for movies too. Now, when you are a young woman growing up in Newton, Newton is a lovely place, but it's far from the world's capital for art. How were you interested in art? I mean, how did you get exposed to learning about painting or nature or just getting interested at all into what you ended up doing?
I don't really know. Um, I loved art. I just did it, but I don't think that it wasn't a passion one way or the other. I was really very interested in sports, and I always played tennis early in my life,
Mhm.
and but I was always doing things in school, and I loved it. One of my favorite things to do, and I think it's interesting how as a little girl um, or as a young kid, you never know what you do as a young person that's going to turn into your life uh, career.
Mhm.
And so I love doing dioramas. I don't know if you did a little diorama when you were a child,
Like in a
but
shoebox or something, yeah.
I love doing that. And it was making little figures and putting them together. And later on, I made my own kites that we flew by gluing sticks and newspaper together with paste that we made out of flour and water. I always was able somehow to fix things that went wrong in my household. I used to watch all the workmen. If there was a carpenter, I'd watch him so I'd know how to do that. So somehow I'm I think of myself as an engineer without a license. And as a sculptor, this has granted me very good stead because sculpture is very mechanical.
Mhm.
And I work with plumbing pipes and tools. I use a sawzall, if you know what that is. And anyway, use torches. I use all sorts of tools that
Yeah.
normally are not used for artists or certainly with girls.
Well, actually, that's something I'd like to talk about, quote unquote, working with girls. Now, at the time you're growing up, was the idea of getting into the arts something that maybe was reserved for just men or just women, or did you feel like you had to break any sort of barrier to get into your profession?
Well, in the very beginning, it was clear that it was only men. I mean, I fell in love with Michelangelo, I always say, when I was maybe third grade or something, which happened because I think people, when I went to the library, somehow there were people who encouraged people to read
Mhm.
books on art, and somehow that happened to me. And I had a third grade teacher in when I was at the Mason School, and she encouraged me, Miss Clark, to hang up my picture, and it was a thrill, and I think she watched me as I developed through the ages in my various times. And she was really very helpful, I think, and encouraged me. But I did it naturally, but I had no idea that it was not even a little tiny thought that I would ever be a public art sculptor or could earn a living at art. It's not easy as a sculptor. It's not easy as a painter, but I think it's even harder because we have enormous financial burdens to deal if you're dealing in bronze, which I do. So our bills are very, very big, and the costs. So another thing we have to do is, as sculptors, we have to be good business people, and artists are notoriously not good people.
And that much is certain. That much is certain.
So, but somehow all of those things seem to be. My father was a florist in Newton Highlands. He had greenhouses, and he also had a fancy store on Newbury Street. He was the Winslow of his time. Anyway, I worked from the time I was a little girl planting seedlings and working with dirt, and somehow that was okay. And little girls don't like to have dirt, but it was okay with me. And I used to work and plant and work in the greenhouses and plant little seedlings and put my little fingers into these little boxes of soil and put the seedlings in, because little fingers can do very special things, of course. So, but I grew up in his flower shop, waiting on people and working very, very hard. So I also learned about working hard. I learned what it's like to try to earn a living when it's hard. And the flower business is a very hard business because it's perishable. And you have to learn how to rotate your flowers and make sure that things are very fresh when they come. Or, for example, in funeral, people usually use things that are not very fresh because they know they're going to only be visible for a few hours. So that's one of the things. Or weddings are more special because people want something very special.
Yeah.
Anyway, I learned a lot by working all my life in his store, his various stores actually.
Now, you talk about how your father was a florist and how even as as a little girl, you were really involved in using your hands to make flowers, right?
But
So,
yeah, I always used to make little animals. So I was always making little sculptures. I
mhm.
didn't draw that much, and I never have. I've always liked the three-dimensional part of what I do. Um,
And I think that's just my question. You seem to be drawn more than a lot of other artists who do public sculpture to animals, to nature, to these beautiful interpretations of the natural world. Do you feel a personal connection to nature that you think might set you apart from other artists?
well, I don't know about other artists, but I know I always had a dog, and as a young married person with my children, I have four children. We had a parakeet, we had a rabbit, and we had guinea pigs. We had a fish tank. We had dogs and cats. And I guess all of those things, plus a few other things, um, wouldn't have happened if my husband and I both didn't love animals and
Yeah.
want to have them. I've never been without a dog until very recently. It's just part of who I am. And there's something I have learned over the years because, as you probably know, or I'll tell you, uh, I have done a lot of different animals. And I have one of the things I do a lot of, I do a lot of research, which is fascinating. I think that's the best part. But each animal has a different anatomy. And people have said my animals have a certain real quality to them. And I think that's because I know a lot about each animal. I know a lot about how they do things and where they go and what they like to eat. And each anatomy of an animal is a little bit different. So this research is part of learning about the animal, which is I think most artists just might just draw an animal,
Mhm.
but for me, it's very important to know, to sort of make them my friends while I'm trying to
Yeah.
have them have perhaps a little personal personality.
I mean, I know that you even went to the public library in Boston to look at some of Mr. McCloskey's drawings for Make Way for Ducklings. I know
Yes,
that you worked on the sculpture, for instance, with a little decoy duck, I think, in your studio with you when you were working on it. So you do seem to take the anatomical research of these things very seriously.
well, um, with the ducks, I bought a duck to
Oh,
find
really?
out.
Oh, really convincing decoy then.
I bought a real duck, and it lasted for a little while till it started to smell. But I also the masters the masters used to copy
Mhm.
in order, or people who went to art school in the older days, like me, but not even more so earlier, would copy the masters in order to learn from them, to get inside their heads. And one of the things I did was I found out at the Boston Library that McCloskey's drawings were there, and I spent hours and hours. Thank heavens they gave me permission, and I copied Mr. McCloskey's drawings
Mhm.
to the nth degree as perfectly as I could, with the idea that I would possibly get in touch with Mr. McCloskey's mind.
Yeah.
But it's really very interesting how that works. And I think it's very important.
Hmm.
Um,
Mr. McCloskey, for those listening who might not know, is Robert McCloskey. Robert McCloskey, one of the, in my opinion, greatest children's book illustrators ever. He, of course, did Make Way for Ducklings, but he did books like Yentl and Blueberries for Sal. And actually, you did both. You did sculptures for both of those pieces. The documentary that I mentioned earlier, you sort of go over the construction of Ducklings, and I don't want to tread a lot of that because there's a lot of work of yours that I'd much rather get into. But what was your relationship to Robert McCloskey? How close were you? He seems to have a lot of trust in the fact that you could bring his illustrations to the third dimension in a way that nobody else could.
well, it's a very interesting story how it came about. Um, my husband was a professor at MIT in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, although he was a philosopher, but they didn't know where to put him, so they put him there. Anyway, when the dean of architecture, the new dean, came to MIT, we as a couple would um, entertain them. And he and his wife was an urban planner herself, and she was interested in the way children use the city. So we had them over for dinner, and somehow Suzanne and I clicked, and we started doing things. Well, it turned out that they had twin boys who were 6 or 7 years old, and they were strolling in the Boston Public Garden, and the boys knew this story of Make Way for Ducklings, even though they had come from England. And the boys said, "Mommy, where are the ducks?" So this was something that set Suzanne off. And she said, you ought to do the ducks. We ought to put those in the Boston Public Garden.
Mhm.
And I said, you are crazy. This is insane. This is just sacred land. And anyway, she persisted, and the rest is history, how that happened. So I don't know if there was more to the question. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. When it comes to McCloskey himself, Robert
Oh,
McCloskey,
yeah. Okay.
what was your relationship to him? I know that he was a friend of a friend, and of course he loved the piece. But when it came to your relationship with him, he seemed to have a lot of trust in you. Did you have a friendship with him?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Um, he was not putting his arm around me immediately, but he and his wife came to visit because this friend knew him, and she told him about us, and she was up in Maine. Anyway, he was coming down from Maine, and he came to my studio, One of the things that's so interesting is when I met him for the first time, and he was coming towards me with his wife. I swear he was coming out of his own books because he looked so much like himself.
Right.
And as artists, we have no choice, but we look at our own faces. So it's often that we will draw something that looks like ourselves and not even realize it. Anyway, that was wonderful. So I had made a maquette, a scaled sculpture of all the Mrs. Mallard and the 9 of the 8 ducklings. So that was 9 sculptures that I did, but they were just tiny. The Mrs. Mallard was 3 inches tall.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I had them all lined up, and he looked at them and he sort of wasn't sure. And his wife said, "Oh, they're wonderful," but of course she wasn't the artist. He said, "We're coming back in 6 weeks, and I want you to do some prototypes of them." So I said, "Sure, okay." Little did I know what this involved.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came back 6 weeks later, and but he was sort of reserved until later on, until we got to really know each other. And of course, why not? So he came back with his wife, and I had made Mrs. Mallard, which was a big son of a gun,
Yeah.
35 inches tall. And I had made a couple of ducklings, and these were in clay, and I had to make armatures. I worked like a devil to get something together. And they were just sketches.
Mm.
And he back, it was a very dark, black October night. And he came, and it was snowing, it was nasty. But they came, and Suzanne was there with us. And he said, "Well, they look awfully big." And I said, "Well, when things go outside, they look much smaller. So this is a pretty good size." And I had a grandchild who always was the right size to test out what a child would look like on a duck or any of my sculptures. This went on and on all the time because I have 11 grandchildren. There was always somebody who was ready to be my to step on whatever the animal was. Anyway, we went outside, and I was staying at a studio in a private in a school, and the kids were coming out. Some of them, some mothers and little kids, were coming from the nursery school, and they went by these ducks that I had done, which were really rough, but they were there. And the little kids started patting them and loving them and hugging them. And that was how we finally.
It was sold.
That's wonderful. However, I was very reluctant to I wanted to make sure all the time. Once I had them done and I was ready to cast them, I invited he and his wife to come and stay with us at my house. Mm-hmm. And I said, "This is your last chance. And if you don't like them, I will understand, and we won't go through with it." Well, of course, by this time I had the 8 ducklings, and they were all finished clay. But I was still very scared that he might, because don't forget, these were his babies. It wasn't, it's different when somebody does something like this. So he must have been okay with it because he really loved it. He did, and so did his wife. So we became kind of friendly, and there were various things that happened with. Then they wanted to do Lentil, and which is the first book that McCloskey did. And that was he was up in Maine, and I said, "Well, he said, "I don't want to." They wanted to put a life-size Lentil, a little boy who's played his harmonica with his dog Lentil, in the park in where he was born in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so he said, "I don't want to have a sculpture in the park. I don't really think so." I said, "Well, why don't I make a little maquette and see what you think?" So I flew up to Bangor and it was freezing, but I made this little maquette. And I was so cold, I can't even tell you when I got there. Anyway, they warmed me up, and I put this. What I do when I do a maquette, it's made of wax, but I put gold on it so it looks like bronze. And I always mount it on a beautiful piece of marble so it looks like a bronze sculpture. It's not just a piece thrown together, it's actual. And it's 1 inch to the foot, so it was about 6 inches tall. So he sat there, and it's also always on, my things are always on turntables if I can, because sculpture's in the round.
Mhm.
So he's going, his finger's going around, he's touching the base and turning it, turning it. He said, it's wonderful.
Oh, yay.
Because I took a big chance because he really didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So then I went to, the rest is history, how I got it. We became very good friends. And his wife was wonderful. I loved her too. So, but she died. And when she died, we had a duck had been stolen. And there's a duck in the Boston Public Library as a tribute to her or as a memorial to her.
Mm.
So we got that particular duck back. And so that's what we did with it. I had 6 ducks that were stolen. Actually, I wrote a book called Make Way for Nancy, and one of the chapters started, if you want to become popular, make some ducks and have them stolen. That's not an exact quote, but it's kind of what I said.
Yeah.
Because it was truth. These ducks were being stolen. I was all over the front page, and they became immediately so, well known. So but it was pretty sad that people kept stealing.
Well,
There are a lot of stories about it.
and that's an interesting thing because as a public artist, you only have so much control over how people interpret the work. People can dress up the ducks in costumes as we've seen done before.
I think that's wonderful.
Exactly. But the opposite side of the spectrum is people might vandalize them or steal them or something like that. How does a public artist like yourself rationalize that the good and the bad of public art?
Well, I've been very lucky that people haven't spray painted them or anything like that. And there haven't been any stolen for some years now because Mayor Menino said that if anybody does this will be a $50,000 fine and 6 months in prison.
Hmm.
So somehow I think that stopped it from happening. As far as the ducks being dressed up, I love that because it's historic, actually, and people are still doing it, even though the book is out. We're not doing a second book on it, which is called Ducks on Parade.
Hmm.
But I public art is for the public, and for the most part, I think when people are dressing them up, they're saying nice things. They're,
Yeah.
celebrating the Bruins, the Red Sox, various things that happen. I've been very lucky. I guess I haven't done anything controversial yet. I certainly have just had a show of very controversial sculptures that have to do with politics, which is a whole other thing that's just very recent. But as far as the ducks getting dressed up, I love it. As far as sculpture is for everybody, one of the things about museums is that you can't touch things and you have to stay away, and they're very strict about it. Museums close. Public art is for everybody. It's for people who are rich or poor, or you can see it morning, noon, and night, any time of the day or night, so that it's really available. It's a wonderful thing. Public art is also very, very profound. It tells a lot in our history if you look at things. And of course, some of our most prized sculptures are being taken away for bad reasons. So it indicates how important they are in our historical this time in history. in this time in history, I felt within the last 6 months, I have done more sculptures than I've ever done in my life because I've stopped doing, for the moment anyway, bronze. I'm doing mixed media
Mm.
because the messages that I'm trying to send, I want to do quickly. And so things are being done with paper and clay and wax and all sorts of stuff. But that's now, and it's not that I feel, again, how important sculpture is, I should say public art, paintings as well, anything we do, dancing. Um, it's very important for us to leave our footprints in history. And one of the things that artists have an obligation to do is to do that. And I feel strongly that at this point in my life, I can say anything I want.
It's true.
And I'm enjoyed doing it. But it's interesting. I think one of the most interesting things that people don't think in the art world is you think about children's literature, for example.
Right.
If you think about children's literature, I don't know if you have kids, but if you look at children's literature, it tells a story of history. You look at what people are saying, what they're eating, how they're dressed. It shows if you go back into, well, what could I go back to? Let's say Huckleberry Finn or something.
Sure, yeah.
But, go back into some of the book, Tom Sawyer, and we'll see how over the years, public art, paperbacks, children's books, all sorts of things, art particularly tells a history. And sometimes it's a hidden history. I have tried in a lot of my things to tell a story. I think that, for example, the Tortoise and Hare is a good example. By the way, I had a little turtle and I had a rabbit in my studio when I did that big sculpture.
There you go. That's actually my favorite piece of yours, if I can be honest. I love that one right there in Copley Square. And I know, here's a little fun fact that I think it's your grandchildren's names are on the underside. Isn't that correct?
True.
There you go. If you put a mirror underneath or your phone or something, you can see the little initials.
Yeah, that's my secret. Um, but also, the Tortoise and Hare is I couldn't do a man or a woman. I felt I wanted that I couldn't do somebody in a wheelchair. So the metaphor of the Tortoise and Hare was the perfect vehicle. We're talking about the marathon, which is people don't do the marathon to win. They do it to do it.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful challenge. And so I love that. I feel so proud of that sculpture. And well, I just think it's important to try. I think the ducks are something too. They're about keeping promises, which is one of the things that I did with Mr. McCloskey, by the way. First of all, the book is about Mrs. Mallard joining Mr. Mallard at the end of the book, and joining him on the island with the three babies. But my promise to Mr. McCloskey was that I would never put the ducks in any other place but Boston. They belonged in Boston. So I could have put ducks down in Crystal Bridges Museum. This is, what's her name? Anyway, Alice Walton.
Yeah.
She has the Tortoise and Hare, by the way, in that big museum. But I can't tell you how many people have wanted the ducks. As a result of that, I've done other sculptures. So that was not only a win-win situation, but it was a good thing to do. Being honest, keeping a promise. This is one of the things I've tried so hard to do in my work. I don't change the price if people want to dicker with me. I try to put up a price that's reasonable and that's right. And unfortunately, if you can't deal with it, but I've let people pay on time. I've done anything so people can reach whatever. But keeping a promise, and it's very hard as an artist, very hard as an artist to, um, especially when you're starting out, not to give discounts or say, well, I'll give you this. I never figured out who was the most important person to give a discount to. So I decided it's just too hard to try to figure.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't want a tiered system or anything like that. I wanted to pick up on something you said there about your pieces sort of reflecting history. I know that a lot of your more recent work is very political. And when it comes to a piece like The Tortoise and the Hare or Winnie the Pooh or something like that, what do you feel those pieces say?
Well, Eeyore is a good example. Eeyore had a birthday party, and Eeyore got a broken balloon and a stick. These were his birthday presents. And instead of crying, he took this stick and, and the broken balloon, and he made a game out of it.
Yeah.
Now, that's wonderful. That's a terrific lesson.
Do you think that it's helpful for people to know the stories of some of the literary characters you bring to life when they see your pieces?
Oh, sure. I think it's always more interesting to know about what has gone into a piece. I did two prairie dogs out in Oklahoma City, and the two prairie dogs are kissing. Now, it turns out that prairie dogs are fascinating. So again, I did a lot of research, but one of the things that I think happened was that uh, the sculpture is done in such a way that it's talking about love, it's talking about friendship,
Mhm.
and the children, they're about the same size as my raccoons down in Tennessee, Nashville.
That's right.
They're maybe about, what should I say, about 2 feet long. Anyway, the sculpture is about 42 inches or 4 feet long. So each one is about 2 feet. That's right. And they're kissing. Underneath, two kids can sit on them on either side of the animals. And in between, they can crawl in. So it's very interactive, which is also one of my main things that people can touch and play on and enjoy. And the kids keep crawling under and through these two figures. And they also are learning about friendship. It's all very subtle. It's not a big deal. It's kind of there. And that's what makes it so exciting. It's sort of like a gestalt. You kind of find it, but it's not always easy to find.
Well, as a public artist, how much does where your piece goes inform what the piece is going to look like? And do you even have any say in where it physically goes?
You bet your sweet Bippy I did.
We're not talking to some geek off the streets. This is Nancy Schön. She gets to call the shots.
Well, first of all, I'm an artist who thinks about my things are site specific. I can never
Right.
say site specific. So that if you come to me from, say, well, where would you like to come from? So you came from Nashville,
Right.
and I got a call, and they wanted the ducks. By the way, that's one place that they wanted the ducks, and I said, no, you can't have them. So they said, well, what would you suggest? Well, I remember Eli uh, Kefauver, who was the senator for Tennessee, and he always wore a coon hat, raccoon hat.
Davy Crockett, yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't know this, but I looked up and I found that, and the board that I was dealing with, because I always deal with boards of directors, they didn't know that the raccoon was the state animal. So, yay, I had a place to go for big site specific. So there are 5 raccoons that are playing Follow the Leader. amongst two huge horseshoes that are made of stone. They're like benches. They're 7 feet in diameter, and they're horseshoes facing each other. And the raccoons are playing in and out of them so that you only see the head of one and you see the tail of the other or the other. So these raccoons are playing so much and they're having so much fun. But then why are they living in these wonderful stone places? Well, I've written a whole little story about them, which is there at the right there at the sculpture.
Right.
So it's kind of playful, and yet always there's a little something about the or background and stories. I think a lot of this is in my book, Make Way for Nancy, if anybody's interested in reading.
Yes, link in the description to Nancy's website where you can grab the book.
Yeah.
When you say that your pieces are very informed by where they are, I'd like to also make the argument that where your pieces are informed by you. I think that you have had a lot of influence in Boston, and I think that the city has embraced the beautiful pieces that you've made for them. I mean, not even just the Ducklings, but the Tortoise and the Hare, and even outside, you see a lot of paraphernalia for the Pooh statues at Newton, or even the new one that just went in last year at the library.
There's also the one that just went into North End. Do you know about that one? It turns out that the somebody from the North End came to me and said that they wanted to do something to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the immigration to the North End from Italy. And would I do something about that? So I thought, well, they wanted me to do something in their garden. There's a peace garden there. And there are beautiful saints there. And I said, no, I don't want to do anything like that. So anyway, I went back, but they wanted to celebrate this wonderful church. St. Leonard's Church is there at in the North End, and it was built 150, now more than 150 years ago, by the immigrants who came by boat to have a better life for their children and themselves. So that was the story. That was sort of the mission. And I thought about it and I thought, seems to me that these people had to come on a boat. I know that sounds funny, but they couldn't come by plane or bus or railroad. They had to come by a boat. Now, just imagine 150 people coming in one boat, all crammed into each other. But they came because they wanted a better life. So the thinking went this way. I think that I should somehow show these people getting off the boat on a gangplank. And that's what the sculpture does. You pretend to get off of, you walk and you pretend to get off the gangplank. And there's an actual gangplank with lifesavers on either side. And there are lights that look like the old lights of a boat. And when you get off, you leave your footprints right there as you walk into the church. And you, as a immigrant, this is all about immigrants. And we are all immigrants. And I repeat this, we are all immigrants. So we leave our footprints as we go, and we go into the church. So symbolically, people who have gotten off the boat, who have built this church, are now leaving their footprints for their forebears to walk in. So you, as somebody, and it doesn't have to be Italian, but it's in the North End, which is basically Italian, and you, you can go in the footprints of your mother, or father, or grandfather. Because if when I gave my speech at it, I asked everybody to raise their hand if they were an immigrant or had a parent who was, or a grandparent. And of course, everybody raised their hand. We all are immigrants. So we all have to be treated right, correctly. So this is a very strong uh, commitment to immigration and fairness and to how people came to have a better life in this country. And they deserve it. And we should support all immigration and all immigrants who come here, since we all bear that name.
Nancy, when are you launching the presidential run? Because you got my vote.
You bet your life. But this is a wonderful thing. People go there. There are little footprints of children with bare feet. So
Yeah.
little kids go there, or anybody goes there to see if they can get their footprints because they're all different sizes of people, and it's a great big carpet of bronze that has lines in it that indicate the footprints. It is. It's a wonder. I love it. So you don't even know about this. You probably don't even know that I'm how important the skate park is under the Second Bridge. I'm called the grandma the grandma skate park.
I uh, I have to ask because you have had such an impact in Boston and your artwork and your activism and the things that you've done for the city we could talk about all day. So what it comes down to is this. How do you see the impact that you've made in Boston? How do you look at what you've done for the city and and sort of feel about it?
It's very hard to get outside myself to look like that. Then I think I've had more of an impact than I have any idea about. I mean, people call me famous, and I don't feel famous or think I am. I just don't know. I certainly think the Ducks are certainly very. Everybody thinks about them as being the most important. Um, I've done a wonderful piece at the Mass General. I've just done a piece that has taken 5 years to put in, that I've done 3D printing that's going into a private university in Taiwan. And that's happening. Two, two figures called dialogue looking at each other, and they're 6 feet tall. They're going in the middle of this campus. And I never went to Taiwan. It was all done with 3D printing.
Nice.
So, so I don't know, but I feel so responsible for things. I feel, for example, the skate park is one of the most important things I did. It's keeping kids off the streets,
Hmm.
saving the city, their architecture. I mean, skateboarders truly were ruining and they still do a certain amount of it, ruining the architecture. The architects hate it because they chip everything. So here's this 40,000 square foot skate park that kids are going to. And it's fascinating to see how the older kids are taking care of the little kids and teaching them how to do their various things. And now it's going to be a sport, or it is in the
In the
Olympics.
Olympics, yeah.
I mean, I just feel like there's so much that people don't know about.
Well, and that's just the thing. You've brought so much joy to the city. Your artwork, your activism. I mean, I think it's indisputable. And that's just the question. When somebody looks at a piece of Nancy Schön artwork, what do you want them to take away from it?
I hope that I've made them happy, brought them some sort of happiness and fun um, and pleasure. We need love. We need good things. I hope I brought some of the things that are so basic to all of us, to feel good when we look at a sculpture, to be able to touch it, to feel it, to love it, to feel just, if I make somebody smile, what a treasure that would be.
I think you've made a lot of people in Boston do a lot more than smile. I think you're I consider you famous. There you go. I think that you're just terrific. Um, those were all the questions I have. I want to do a rapid fire round where I ask your opinion on some other sculptures in Boston. You're sort of the authority of sculptures in Boston, but you're not the only public artist in the city. Uh, do you have any opinions on the Edgar Allan Poe statue right
I love it.
with the crow coming out and everything?
Yeah, I like it.
What about the statue, the new one of MLK and his wife's hands? Martin Luther
Um,
King and his wife's
I
hand.
haven't actually seen that in person, and I would say that it has some pluses and some minuses. Um, the people who talk about the minuses, I think, should look at it again. The pluses are it's it depends on how you think about it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's I think it's very controversial. I think it has some positive things. I wouldn't say, like I said about the poll, I really like that. I feel it's very successful. I can't really make a positive judgment, a plus, but I can't say negatively either. And I really think it's not right since I haven't seen it. But I love, for example, the curly statues. Lloyd Lilly was a very good friend of mine. And I think he's done some remarkable work that has not been, people don't know how wonderful his work is. Those two statues are marvelous. His Jefferson and the Arch is incredible. And then he did the Red Auerbach, which I love and I think is wonderful. And he did a lot of stuff, historic pieces that are really first class.
Hmm.
I like Penelope Jenks has just done a portrait of Ozawa in Tanglewood, which you probably don't even know about because it just happened.
So, yeah.
Um,
What about the potato famine memorial, the very infamous one downtown?
yeah, I'm not crazy about that. Not because it's sad, but because I don't know.
What about speaking of the North End, what about the Paul Revere statue there at the Old North Church?
Oh, yeah, well, that's a classic.
And of course, the most iconic, the most beautiful, and the most scenic piece of art in all of, maybe even all of Massachusetts, is in our own native Newton. That is, of course, the Star Market that goes over the highway. What do you think of that?
Oh, is that a sculpture?
I would think that it's a piece of public art if ever there was one. Let's even call it performance art.
Well, it certainly works functionally.
There you go.